Warhammer Vermintide 2, a first-person action game that continues the co-op battle against the Chaos Army. You know, rat people. It has the distinction of being a great co-op, melee-oriented first-person game, and there's not a lot of that. I think probably because nobody's really come up with a game that worked as good as the first Vermintide, and now this one, it reaches even higher levels than the first. I mean, you're talking 15 classes, every single one has their own tree, and the action is fast-paced, interesting, and makes a first-person game that doesn't have guns, or really even a lot of projectiles at all, really interesting. Number 14 is Far Cry 5, which is one of the better Far Cry games, or at least north of my expectations for it. At the same time, it does pretty much exemplify a lot of what's wrong with Far Cry, but not in so bad a way that I can't bring myself to say it actually doesn't belong on this list. It does. I mean, it's such an interesting and original story that turns a lot of historical events from America in on themselves and takes a gameplay formula that I would normally criticize for being a little too familiar and gives us a world that's just dense, interesting, beautiful, and a story that's just wild. Yes, you're gonna do some of the annoying open world stuff, but it's actually worth it in Far Cry 5, especially knowing where the sequel's going. I mean, Ubisoft did something very right here. It's not perfect, of course. It's got its flaws, but I ended up finding myself pretty hooked to it. I liked it a lot. Number 13 is Dead Cells. Oh, Dead Cells, you are so wonderful. In addition to being developed by an anarcho-syndicalist co-op, which is just bizarre, you don't really hear that kind of thing very often. Dead Cells happens to also be a really creative and interesting game. It's a game that feels like a Metroidvania, but really isn't. It's a roguelike. You have a lot of different worlds to traverse, and you set right at the beginning when you die. It's pretty much a version of permadeath, and it's hard, but it's also really a good flow that keeps you minimally frustrated, even when you die at a pivotal point. It's certainly not unique in its type, but it's probably the best of this type of game I've played. It pretty much learns all the lessons of the genre, implements so much, and keeps you interested so well. I also love playing it on Switch. It's absolutely wonderful on Switch. Number 12 is Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which continues where Assassin's Creed Origins left off in terms of gameplay enhancement. Frankly, what Origins did to the Assassin's Creed formula was really good, and Assassin's Creed Odyssey expands on it in some ways that do work, others that don't not work. They don't really get in the way, but did they really add anything? But overall, it gives us probably the best, most beautiful, most detailed, most lived in, most dense, most interesting location we've ever played Assassin's Creed in. And again, it also benefits from being a post-Origins game where we have the much more RPG-oriented elements added in. It's a hell of a game. Like, is it as good as Origins? No, but the fact that they came out with another one this high quality just a year after that, it's impressive. I do hope they slow down and we continue at the very high quality, but we'll see. Number 11 is Monster Hunter World, which is absolutely 100% just everything you could ask for from it. Monster Hunter is such a beloved franchise, and frankly, we've never gotten a bad game, but this is kind of the culmination of all of the experience. It's accessible to Western audiences, it's a full open world game, and yet it retains everything that makes Monster Hunter so good. And let's just go ahead and say this is a AAA game that deserves to be called a AAA game. Number 10 is Return of the Obra Dinn, a very specific looking game. It's a black and white puzzle game that is very stark, very bold, that puts you in the role of an insurance adjuster who has to find out what happened to an East India Trading Company ship where the crew and passengers all just died. The game is a logic puzzle that engages the player in deductive reasoning. So when you beat this game, you feel really good. It's one of those games that makes you feel smart without, I think, doing it cheaply, which is nice. And really, you can't deny the look of this game. You're not going to see a lot of games do something as bold as this, let alone just make this beautiful atmospheric mystery that's hard to imagine any other way, honestly. Number 9 is Final Fantasy 15 on the PC, which is a total graphical upgrade from the console version. It is genuinely about a generation ahead of the console version of the game. It has 4K support, but that's not all it does. There's revamped textures, scenes are occupied by more people, just everything about it is noticeably much prettier. And it's hard to understate exactly how interesting Final Fantasy XV is with the route it takes for character development. If you didn't play it, the Windows Edition is the way to do it. Number 8 is Valkyria Chronicles 4, a return to form for the series and just an absolutely enjoyable version of this game. Best graphics in the series, best battles I've experienced in a while, just a completely unique type of gameplay. Valkyria Chronicles, whenever they do it, and they do the normal Valkyria Chronicles thing instead of the Revolution thing, you should just play it, it's great. At number 7 is BattleTech, a turn-based strategy game based in the old school, frankly, kind of left by the wayside franchise that hasn't got the kind of attention it deserves in a very long time. This is a game that doesn't just give you a more than competent strategy mech game, but it gives you a great story, actual characters to care about, and harebrained schemes. A company founded by one of the people involved in creating the BattleTech / MechWarrior franchise, and it shows because this game is really lovingly crafted. It was clearly a passion project for folks involved with it, and if you like turn-based strategy, this is one you have to try out this year. Number 6 is Frostpunk, a game that just, it seems so easy to explain, but I don't think it says enough. It's a city building game that's also a survival game, and it's just such a different idea, and yet seems so familiar without being boring. It's a game that forces you to make hard decisions, like intentionally very hard decisions, that frankly there isn't an appealing answer to, and this sort of dark version of a city building game is just something that I feel like we need more of. I hope the developers continue to make games like this, where they build on this type of a concept, because it's so fun, it's so good, and it really does actually affect you. It makes you feel like, oh, I didn't really want to do this, but I had to, yay. Number 5 is Kingdom Come Deliverance, which, do not get me wrong, has its problem. This is a game that, well, launched pretty buggy. It's got a lot of arguments about it across the internet, but there is one thing it deserves some praise for, and that is its combat system. It is one of the most ambitious combat systems in a game, period. And it takes a lot of learning and nuance to get a hold on exactly what you're doing, but once you do, it is very satisfying. Number 4 is Insurgency Sandstorm, a tactical first-person shooter game, which is a game that focuses very, very hard on realism, keeps the HUD very simple. It's a game where you have to play on one of two sides, insurgents or security, and it is absolutely brilliant as either competitive or co-op. It's very detailed, very realistic, and as far as sound design goes, a bit disturbing, frankly. But hey, it's something that really feels a little bit more real, which sometimes that's very good. Number 3 is Forza Horizon 4. Out of the two Forza series, my preference is definitely Horizon. It's really just a beautiful game that has dynamic seasons, shows just a ton of jaw-dropping scenery all around Britain, and really just ends up putting together a shared world that works in such a seamless and enjoyable fashion. It's big. That's like the thing that you can describe this game as. Not just big for the sake of big though, but a really well developed, deep experience that manages to be both deep and casual. I love it. I really enjoy it. Number 2 is Subnautica, which is an open world survival game that is set basically underwater. It takes place on an alien planet. That alien planet is an ocean planet, and it's your job to explore it, and it's beautiful, and it's sometimes dangerous and horrible, and the base building is actually good. It's not just the same thing as every single game. There's a creative mode, there's a hardcore mode. It's a really interesting game, and I get why a lot of people think it's the best survival game. And at number 1, we have Pillars of Eternity 2: Deadfire. You know, because Obsidian is great. It's a direct sequel to Pillars of Eternity, continues the story, and yet gives you such a larger world to explore and deal with. AI is improved, lots of problems of pathfinding were improved. Just so much is better in this version of the game, and Pillars of Eternity itself is one of the absolute best examples of the top-down, old-school CRPG. Obsidian is just the king of RPGs. Honestly, they're great. They're just gonna put out great RPGs until, the world ends or whatever happens. So good on them. A quick bonus for you, Sea of Thieves for Windows, which, it's a game that has some fair criticism for it, but it is a highly ambitious, very pretty, fun game to hang out in. I do hope it continues to get support. It's a great game, I enjoy it, and I think if expanded upon, it could be an ongoing incredible experience. We'll see though, because it had some harsh criticism. Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy, which, let's just be clear, if you've ever played a platforming game and thought, hey, this is good, I have to recommend. The first 3 Crash games were amazing. And considering they were made at a time when the 3D platformer wasn't really established as to exactly what it would be, it's tremendously influential because it managed to merge these sort of course style 2D platforming conventions with multi-directional movement. I love Crash. The remakes look amazing and gorgeous, and they play better than ever. Just some of my favorite games. And finally, Ashen, which is a Souls-like with a totally different graphic style. Frankly, one of the most visually enticing of the Souls-like games. And it just gives some type of kinda journey-like graphics with a similar story to Dark Souls, but somehow feels more personable, and nobody has faces. What were your favorite PC games of 2018? Leave us a comment, let us know what you're thinking, and if you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is to click the subscribe button and not to forget to click the notification bell. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on GameRanks.